Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Heller. I'm welcoming you to the Speakers and Leaders Hour. We're delighted to have you with us. For those of you who are wondering why Dave Wilkins is not here, do not worry. He is well, and we will see him later. In the meantime, I would like to introduce you to some very special guests. To my immediate left is David Fricke. Did we show David? Whether you can see him or not, he is here. There he is. And next in line is Marlene Maxine Nahrwold. And then we have, on the end, we have Bryan Berstein. These people have one very interesting thing in common with each other. They all belong to the Smoky Montgomery Club, club number 159. It is, in fact, the oldest club in this part of the country. And they are celebrating their Diamond Jubilee. Yes, they were formed 75 years ago. So we are delighted to have them here, and we will soon be hearing from them. On the other side of the room, we have our regulars, Patricia Knaebe. There she is. Lovely Patricia is with us. She will be our general evaluator this evening, and next to her is Marlene Purdy, our world traveler. She has agreed to join us tonight, even though she's been to warmer and perhaps better climes recently. All right. We are delighted to have you here, and we have a jam-packed program for you. If you would like to call in, the number is 422-3902, 422-3902, and we would indeed welcome your calls. So, without further ado, I think we will get right into this and hear from this illustrious club, 159. A lot of clubs have come and gone since they were formed in 1940, but they're holding fast. And one of the reasons for that is Dave Fricke, our first speaker. He's been a Toastmaster for 25 years. He's past president of 159 on 2 occasions, and he's the current sergeant at arms. And he's also a good friend of mine. The title is, by the way, working from his CC manual, that's the basic manual, The Entertaining Speech. The title of his speech is The Importance of Doubting Our Doubts. An intriguing title. Help me welcome Dave.
Thank you, Tom. Fellow Americans, nearly 30 years ago, 3 Soviet cosmonauts returned to Earth and were greeted by, at that time, Soviet Premier Chernenko. After the official reception, he took them aside and asked them quietly and privately, "Did you see any angels?" They answered, "Yes, sir. We saw billions of them." The Soviet premier was visibly shaken, and after taking a few moments to regain his composure, was heard to say, "You know, I've been afraid of this for quite some time, but don't tell the people, they're not ready for it yet." So a couple of weeks later, the same 3 cosmonauts went to Rome to confer with the Pope. After the official reception, he took them aside and asked them quietly and privately, "Did you see any angels?" They answered, "No, sir, not a one." The pontiff was visibly shaken, and after taking a few moments to regain his composure, was heard to say, "You know, I've been afraid of this for quite some time, but don't tell the people, they're not ready for it yet." There's something about the existence of the angelic host that brings out the skeptic in the believer and unbeliever alike. In the use of the English language, we don't deal with the word doubt very well, at least in the positive sense. It's almost one of those Rodney Dangerfield words. It doesn't get a whole lot of respect. When we were kids, living at home or in school, we learned very quickly that if you questioned the authorities too vocally, whether it be at home or at school, you usually got an understanding smile and a rap in the mouth. However, in the area of science, anything that was discovered, that has been discovered, was discovered because someone dared to doubt the accepted thinking of their time. In an era when it was believed that the earth was flat and the sun revolved around the earth, Columbus and a few brave men dared to doubt. Galileo was right when he called doubt the father of discovery. However, in the area of religion, we sing so confidently the hymns, recite the creeds, and yet The doubts and uncertainties that all of us have tend not to get expressed very well. Some years ago, I read some writings of the late Harry Emerson Fosdick that were something of a revelation to me. He writes, while Jesus admonished his followers that if they have faith and doubt not, and say to the mountain, move, it will be cast into the sea, this same Jesus was also a magnificent doubter. Wild ideas of a war-making Messiah that were prevalent in his time, Jesus doubted this. Since the time of Moses, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth was considered to be the true law. Jesus doubted that. Jesus saw men trusting in long prayers, rigid Sabbath rules, and strict dietary laws, and doubted them all. He saw men trusting in ancient traditions because they were ancient and poured out the skepticism. It was said unto them of old time, but I say to you, the greatest faith is built on foundations that were once occupied by the strongest of doubt. In an era when it was first believed that steamships could be made to cross the Atlantic Ocean, many people were skeptical. One of these skeptics went so far as to write a book on why a steamship couldn't possibly carry enough fuel to make the voyage. The first steamship that landed in New York Harbor had a copy of this book on board. In the late 1800s, Charles Dewey, the head of the U.S. Patent Office at that time, resigned because he doubted if anything useful was left to be invented. He doubted the power of the human imagination and the creativity of the human mind. He should have doubted his doubts. Believers can be credulous, but unbelievers as well can be gullible fools. In the late 1930s, the world was stunned when Adolf Hitler first took his armies into the Rhineland, then Austria, then Czechoslovakia, and finally Poland, which led to the outbreak of World War II. For anything else that can be said about Adolf Hitler, no one can say that he didn't lay out a detailed blueprint of the kind of world he intended to create some 15 years before in Mein Kampf. I suppose that the arena that most of us have the most trouble in doubting our doubts is in the area of human emotion. Some 15 years ago, my mother had cataract surgery. She was 80 years old at the time, and went to see Dr. Parrott. Dr. Parrott told her that he counseled two 85-year-old men earlier that day. The first said that he was 85 years old, didn't have much longer to live, and didn't know if the operation would be worth it. The second said the same thing, that he was 85 years old, only for whatever reason he wanted to be able to see everything that he could see for whatever time he had left. Nearly a year ago, one of my heroes, the late Reggie Primo of Fort Wayne Comet Livery, died. He was an accomplished center in the IHL, but to me, a lot of his accomplishments tended to be made later in life. In 1998, he underwent kidney dialysis. In 2000, he lost a leg to diabetes right below the knee. He set a couple of goals for himself. One, he wanted to be able to walk reasonably well with the prosthesis. He was an avid golfer all his life and wanted to be able to play golf. And the third and final thing that he would like to do, and it was a little tougher nut to crack, was be able to skate again. It took some doing in nearly 5 years, but in 2005, he went out to the McMillan Ice Rink with the new prosthesis and with the help of a Comet trainer and skated for nearly 1 hour and 20 minutes. While skepticism and doubt take us to the boundaries of that which is possible, optimism and hope makes its journey beyond that boundary. Doubt knocks on the door, hope answers the door, and there's no one there. Hope is a contrarian. It buys stock on Tuesday after Black Monday. Shakespeare was right. Our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we might oft win by fearing to attempt. In closing, I think I can say I've given doubt fair play. I've said in its favor the best that can be said. But the world has enough skepticism built into it already. What's needed today are more skeptics that cross the bridge from skepticism to the intent that they doubt their doubts. Mr. Holler. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Fricke. We enjoyed, or at least I enjoyed that. I think we all enjoyed it very much. Our next presenter will be Maxine Nahrwold. If I get it wrong, I'm sure she'll correct me. She's speaking from the Competent Communicator. I think this notation means she's going through it for the second time, I'm guessing. Project number 8, Get Comfortable with Visual Aids. She's been a Toastmaster for 5 years. She is the current president of 159, and she enjoys being a Toastmaster. That doesn't surprise me, but you don't often see it in this kind of a form, so I'm delighted that she realizes the importance of enjoying it, and that she is doing so. Now, her speech title intrigues me, The First 30. So I don't know if that means she's celebrating her 31st birthday or not. We'll find out. Help me welcome Maxine.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and TV audience. Who were the first 30 men that met on April 27th, 1940, right here in Fort Wayne at the YMCA to form our Toastmaster Club? This month, the Fort Wayne Smoky Montgomery Toastmasters Club is celebrating our 75th anniversary. There are many similarities with the original first 30 as there are to our members today. In 1924, Dr. Ralph Smedley in California, he was the secretary of the YMCA, he noticed that these young college men were lacking the art of public speaking and presiding over a meeting. So he wanted to encourage and train these young men. So he came up with this social club, and he didn't know what to call it, but he called it Toastmasters. And I don't want you to think that we're masters at making toast, because we can burn our toast. It didn't take long. This news traveled across the United States, and the news hit Fort Wayne, Indiana. A YMCA in those days was like a dormitory, and young men would come there and stay. If you relocated to Fort Wayne, what a better place would be to go to the YMCA, join this social club, and get to meet other people in Fort Wayne. The YMCA provided religious, recreational, and social environment for these young men. Club 159 was started with 30 men. There's very few records on our club, so I contacted Toastmasters International. They were kind enough to give me the charter members of our club. I was also fortunate that the U.S. government took a census in 1940. So I went to the census book, I made up a spreadsheet, and I looked up all 30 men. I matched up the addresses to make sure that I had the correct person I was researching, and I started doing some studying on it. Why was there 30 men in this club? Why did it start with 30 men? That was the rule for Toastmasters in that day. You could have 30 members. You had a waiting list. If you had 30 members and someone else wanted to join, your name was put on this waiting list. When that waiting list got to have 30 names, a new club would be started. I don't know for sure, but the Anthony Wayne Club was started in 1947. That just may be a branch off of our club, I'm not sure. So in the census, you gather lots of information. The first one was the marital status of the members in 1940. 11 of them were single, 17 were married, and 2 were divorced. We have a broad range in our club also today. Then, the birthplace. You know, you think the club's in Indiana. Most people were born in Indiana, but that wasn't the case. 2/3 of the members were born in other cities and other states. Some in other countries. One in Italy, one in England, one in Canada. So I did a little research, and the furthest east the members was New Hampshire, and the furthest west was North Dakota. They started way up at Minnesota, and the members, some of them were born in Texas, and like I said, Italy, England, and Canada. There's also the ages. The ages of those members were 21 to 53. And I don't know, but I would just guess that you had to be 21 in order to join a Toastmasters club, possibly in 1940, because I know you can live at the YMCA at a younger age than 21. In our club, a few years ago, we had an 18-year-old, and we go all the way up to 70. So there's a big range of age there also. Most of them in 1940 were younger. 13 were under the age of 30, 12 under the age of 40, 4 under the age of 50, and the 1 53-year-old. Occupations, a wide range of occupations, just like in our club today. In our club today, we have an electrician, we have an attorney, we have a machinist, we have a nurse, several retirees, pastors. It's just a big range of careers. Back in 1940, there was an accountant. He came from England, and he was 53 years old. He worked for a wholesale truck company. I am assuming that was International Harvester because they were very dominant in Fort Wayne at the time. 6 agents, 2 of them for a television company, 3 for an insurance company, and 1 for a wholesale grocer. The wholesale grocer, his last name was Rogers. There was a Rogers Market here in Fort Wayne. I would assume he had some connection with that. There were 5 attorneys in this club. 2 of them were patent attorneys, and they worked for Farnsworth Television Company. I'm not familiar with Farnsworth Television Company, but Mr. Philo Farnsworth owned this television company. He had 300 patents. He had to have the top-of-the-line patent attorneys working for him because he was in rivalry with RCA continually with his inventions, his patents. There were 2 attorneys that worked for a life insurance company, and we know Lincoln National Life Insurance Company was home office right here in Fort Wayne. And then 1 attorney had a private practice. There were bakers. I was surprised. There were 2 bakers that worked for a wholesale bakery, and there are several bakeries here in Fort Wayne. There were 3 clerks, a post office, an auto dealership, and a pump manufacturing company. Clothing cutter. I found this very interesting. This clothing cutter came from Italy. He was a tailor. I can just imagine these young men walking down the sidewalks with a finely tailored suit. This gentleman from Italy may have joined just to increase his English-speaking skills. There was an electrical tester and 2 engineers. They worked for an electrical company. Again, General Electric was very prominent in Fort Wayne. 4 managers. 1 managed a retail fur store. He had to have good speaking skills. When these ladies would come in to want to buy their fur, he would need to be able to speak with them. 1 managed a box and printing company, 1 a winding company, and another a wholesale grocery. Tool maker. There were 2 tool makers. We have a tool maker in our club right now. 1 owned his own shop, and he lived out in the country. But you know, he had to have good speaking skills because he had to go out and get jobs and deal with the customers all the time. And then the last one was the secretary of the YMCA, just like Dr. Smedley. And so that was very interesting. Also in the census, they said the incomes. They showed the incomes. The average income in 1940 was $1,300 for the household. 3 of the members were under that, but the rest of them were all above that. Mr. Philo Farnsworth's patent attorney made $3,000 that year of the census. The Italian tailor who tailored these suits, he was in the 2,000. Most of the accountants and the attorneys were up in the thousands of dollars there. There is one difference with our club today compared to what it was in 1940. women are allowed to be members of the Toastmasters Club. And I have been told that the first woman in this division was a member of Club 159. So right now in our club we have 6 women and 6 men. So we're we're very similar to that. I do want to share with you a certificate of achievement that we have received from Toastmasters International commending us on our 75th anniversary. And I just wish I could speak with the first 30 and just find out more about them. I enjoyed looking up their information. Mr. Toastmaster.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that. As you were talking, I realized that in those days it would be an all-male thing, and it's hard to imagine that because very, very many of our key people are female. All right, as it is in life. Our final speaker will be Bryan Berstein. He first joined Toastmasters in 1986 and served 3 times as a charter president in Baltimore, Maryland. During his membership there, he was on a Toastmaster debate team that won the Mid-Atlantic Coast contest in 1989. I don't even know about these things. We'll probably learn a little more. Bryan rejoiced Toastmaster Club 159 in 2011, where he... Oh, okay. I'm with it now. Bryan rejoined joined Club 159 in 2011, where he participates now. And I've been there, and I know he participates very actively. Help me welcome Bryan Berstein speaking on useless noises.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster. I want you to listen very carefully to the following. Did you hear that? That's the sound of tension. What I did was I paused. I broke the bond between the audience and the speaker. There's a natural bond that forms. When you hear a speaker, you do not like to see him fail or her fail. It's uncomfortable for you, and certainly, if you've been up here, it's uncomfortable for the speaker. And that, of course, is why so many people regard public speaking as the most profound fear that they have. It's a fear greater than they rate death. Toastmasters, of course, is designed to deal with that fear. And it is that fear of a pause, of not knowing what to say, of looking absent. That's the fear that drives us. Toastmasters addresses that as its first principle. It does what we use as a metaphor. It addresses the butterflies that you have in your stomach. What it does, we commonly say, is Toastmasters does, it gets your butterflies to fly in formation. It doesn't get rid of them. To get rid of them, then you might get sloppy. Toastmasters also does, as you may know, if you've been watching this show, it gives leadership opportunities. These leadership opportunities give you a chance to learn how to ask people for help. That is the essence of leadership, to artfully and effectively get other folks to do work for you. And Toastmasters has these opportunities all the way to an international level. What I'm talking about tonight, fellow Toastmasters and audience, the special one or the special 1 million out there, Toastmasters gives you special techniques, particularly subtle virtues, like the virtue of using the pause instead of making useless noises. We've all heard them, and it's Toastmasters grammarian, or the master, or the elocutionist, depending on what you want to call them. They are the ones that come after us during our chapter meetings and our speeches to point out when we've done the evil thing of making a useless noise. What am I talking about? I'm talking about making a noise to avoid a pause. I'm talking about words like and. There are those who cannot bear the thought of stopping a sentence and starting another one. And so they use and string their speeches out endlessly. Now, in our own experience, we see people who do this. And I'm stunned that the most electrifying speaker in our country, the one we love watching, is the worst one in politics right now at this particular problem. You can listen to the President of the United States on the radio and get an entirely different feeling about what he's saying. But watching him, because of his beauty and his style, you can overcome this. You don't think about those noises that he's making. I'm not sure if he's in as much terror as I am, but he does make more noises than I am right now, I think. You listen to him on the radio, and you could count the uhs, and it would keep an ah master busy. Other words that you might find being used are, you know, I was angry. You might hear someone say that. Or, I was angry. Or, I was angry. I was angry. Well, guess what? I was angry. Those extra words, actually, we find, reduce the impact of what we say if we merely paused. I was angry. You have so much more effect. I hope you see that. And so, when you join Toastmasters, you will pay attention to that, because the grammarian will be bringing this to your attention. I invite you to join Toastmasters. As you see in my introduction, I've been a member 2 times. And I find that when I'm not a member anymore, I make mistakes. And so, well, guess what? You got nothing to lose. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you very much. All right, we've had a great 3 speeches from a fine senior citizen of the club. Now we're running very low on time, so I'm very confident in turning the control of the lectern over to our own Patricia Knaebe, because I know that she'll just hurry us right through this part. Help me welcome Patricia, our general evaluator.
Thank you, Master Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most honored guests at home. The general evaluation portion of the meeting is meant to give us an overview of what we are doing well and what can be improved upon. And I am going to cut immediately to the chase. Our first evaluator, Bryan Berstein, is going to evaluate Dave Fricke's speech. Bryan.
One of the things in Toastmasters that you will experience when you join is the existence of these manuals that guide you through your speaking. They challenge you, they direct you to different kinds of experiences in public speaking. And this is one of them. David presented me with this manual that he's working through. Since it's one of the early manuals, I suspect he's working through it for maybe the 15th time. This is a speech, the entertaining speech, and it certainly was entertaining. And I found that he did not follow the instructions. This calls for a speech relating to a personal experience. And it says, although it will not be rigidly organized, it should have a direction. Well, this speech had a profound direction. Profundity, that is a feature of David's presentation. David, you'll note, used rather exhaustingly special, rich references and citations. It wasn't a simple speech that he gave. It was a speech that goes right to our hearts as we confront challenges and difficult things that we must think about, things that cause us to doubt, our faith perhaps. Now, hey, I didn't pause. He used examples, references, quotes. They were literary, they were historic. The key thing that I noticed in David's presentation was that David prepares. I'm not accustomed to that. But it's a feature of his involvement in Toastmasters. David is the only one of us who knows Smoky Montgomery. It's not on that, is it? Smoky Montgomery, to whom our club is nominally dedicated. Smoky was a tough taskmaster. And David learned from him and puts a high value on his speeches. And so he did a lot of preparing. In an evaluation like this, we're supposed to come up with some suggestion of change, some improvements that David might make. The only one I can think of is that he seemed slightly rigid as he stood at the lectern. He didn't move. There were a couple of gestures, but they seemed mechanical. David prepared so intensely that it wasn't flexible. I note that when he speaks, and I've seen him speak a number of times, when he speaks more extemporaneously, with less preparation, he's more jocular, more flexible, and uses gestures. So it's an interesting tension in the way he deals with speaking. Mr. Toastmaster, or Miss Inspector General,
Bryan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bryan. Our next evaluator is Dave Fricke. He will be evaluating Maxine Nahrwold's speech. Dave.
General evaluator. Well, Toastmasters. Maxine, I thought you had an excellent speech. Your visual aids, I thought, were very appropriate for the nature of your speech. The visual aids, I guess, did help to understand what you were trying to communicate. Thought you used them very smoothly. Your body language, I thought, was very good. The speech had to have been well rehearsed. You probably put a whole lot more preparation into that speech than I put into mine, just from the standpoint of the research you had to do to dig up some of that stuff going back, at this point, nearly 75 years. But the only thing that I thought that maybe you might have done differently, and I've run into this at different times before, that when I was sitting where I was sitting, and you were sitting where you were sitting, and I looked at your visual aids, and I thought they showed up very well, and just everything about it was excellent. But I thought you had an excellent material there for possibly a PowerPoint presentation, but we didn't have the equipment or time to do that kind of preparation in here. But to try to be able to see your visual aids, to get them to make, you might say, any kind of sense at all, just on the television monitor, they were hard to read, a lot of them. But overall, I thought you had an excellent speech, and I look forward to hearing your next speech. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Dave. Last and certainly not least is Maxine Nahrwold, who will evaluate Bryan Berstein's speech. Maxine.
Madam General Evaluator, Toastmasters, and TV audience. I have the privilege of evaluating Bryan's speech. He talked about tension, but I don't see tension in Bryan at all when he's up here. He seems very relaxed. He promoted Toastmasters very good. He told us about the benefits of Toastmasters. He encouraged the audience, if they were interested, they should come out and join a Toastmasters club. He promoted it, said that Toastmasters promotes self-confidence and leadership, which it does. And he said we can ask for help if we're into a situation that we can't. Anyone in our club will help us out. He just shared the theme of Toastmasters very good, and I enjoyed his speech. He does a great job, and like I said, I didn't see his tension at all when he's up here. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Maxine. Madam Timer, would you please give us the times of the 3 speeches?
They had all requested 5 to 7, at least that's what I had heard. And some of them did okay, some of them went a little long to this evening. David Fricke came in at 7 minutes 45 seconds, and they're allowed 30 seconds over, so he was just a little over. Maxine went 9 minutes 16 seconds, and Bryan was in at 5 minutes 56 seconds.
Thank you, Marlene. We are running short on time. Typically, this is the time when the general evaluator gives his or her comments on the speeches and on the meeting. However, at this time, I'm going to return control to our Toastmaster, Mr. Tom Haller.
Thank you very much, Madam General Evaluator and our guests. Excellent meeting, I would say, in my opinion. You folks meet the second and fourth Tuesday, is that correct? They meet the second and fourth Tuesday of every month at 6:30 in the evening in the Lutheran Hospital basement right beside the cafeteria. You get that close, you can find it. And I believe they're still welcoming guests. So, on that note, we will go into some PSAs and return for the parliamentary portion of the meeting. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you very much. And now for our next speaker, Stanley Glitchner.
Speaking in public doesn't have to be a death sentence. At Toastmasters, we can help you overcome your fears.
I'd like to begin tonight with a little joke. This guy, he's a farmer, and he says, "Hey, hello, sorry." But seriously, folks.
Speaking in public is no joke.
Farmer says, doctor says, chicken says,
For help, call Toastmasters, the public speaking support group.
The chicken.
All the education in the world will help you get ahead in life if you can express your ideas effectively. Every day, competition for advancement gets tougher and tougher. You need an edge. A Toastmasters club can give you that edge. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters gives you the confidence to express your ideas to anyone. Get the Toastmasters edge.
What future do you envision for yourself? What dreams do you have? If you want your dreams to come true, you must have confidence in yourself and your abilities. A Toastmasters Club can help you build that confidence. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters shows you how to express yourself clearly and effectively. Make your dreams a reality. Join a Toastmasters Club.
Hello, welcome back. Glad to see you've all returned to us. I have one more Toastmaster Pacific comment to make. Don't know if a sign can be picked up at all or not, but this, Tuesday, April 21st, at this very library downtown right here in the auditorium, there will be a very high caliber presentation by the Summit City Club 1309. It will be about being a championship speaker. So if you can possibly spare the time, I think you would find that very worthwhile. Now, speaking of worthwhile, do we have a special guest for you? This is not something you will find every day. Help me welcome none other than Henry Roberts. Henry, come on in.
Well, thank you very much, Tom. It's been a few months since I've seen you. I'm sort of like Marley's ghost. I appear once a year during Parliamentary Month to promote parliamentary procedure. As you probably figured, I am the ghost of Henry Robert, the man that wrote Robert's Rules of Order. But I'd like to take a few moments to talk about and recognize the countless, nameless people from the past who have contributed to the parliamentary world. If we can go back 3,500 years to ancient Greece, you will find that the Greeks gave us something back then that we use unchanged even unto today, and that is the ballot box. Just think about it. They used the ballot box 3,500 years ago by having people put different colored stones into the box to indicate their preference for whatever it was they were voting for. And the ballot box has come forward unchanged for all of that time, even unto today. Now, that's just one item out of many, many over the course of the centuries. We could move forward up to the Roman times. Now, what did the Romans add? Well, they added debate. They gave us the notion of having a discussion before you use the ballot box to vote. So that's another little chink in the parliamentary world. If we move forward to the year 1250 in Great Britain, in a meadow called Runnymede, just outside of Windsor Castle, there good old King John was forced to sign the Magna Carta, the Great Charter. He was so mad after he signed that, they said that when he rode his horse back to Windsor Castle, that he actually frothed and foamed at the mouth. Well, what does the Magna Carta do with us today? Well, one of the things that was in that Great Charter was the fact that if you were to be charged with some sort of miscreant effect, you were to be judged by your peers, not by the king and his minions. That's just one of the many things that the Magna Carta gave us, as well as the beginnings of the Houses of Parliament. Now, the Houses of Parliament held the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and by 1604, they gave us several things that we use even unto today. First off, and foremost, balanced debate. If you're a chairman and you're the president of a meeting, you need to balance debate for and against, for and against. In 1604, they also had by that time developed the speaker, that person who sat in the center and directed this debate back and forth before the vote was taken. And the most important single thing that was done in 1604 was they decided, they write it into the law, that if you took a vote, it was not a full question unless you had the negative vote taken also. In other words, all those in favor say aye, all those opposed say no. You have to take the negative vote. By 1632, a whole bunch of pilgrims had crossed the waters and came to America, and there at Plymouth Rock, the very first document documenting rights and responsibilities here in America was signed. 1632 was when that was signed. By the year 1776, we all know here that it was the year of the great Declaration of Independence, when we decided that we would be a country apart from Great Britain. That document, of course, stands even unto today. And then in 1802, our third president, and that was Thomas Jefferson, the writer of the Declaration of Independence, he wrote a book. He wrote this book here, The Manual of Parliamentary Practice. And that book was written for the House of the Senate and the House, and it told them specifically how they were supposed to act. You couldn't talk across the table. You had to talk through the chair. You couldn't be disrespectful. You couldn't use foul language. You couldn't put your feet up on the table, and it says clearly in here there was no longer spitting on the floor. 1802. 1802, so things are coming forward. By 1840, a man named Luther Cushing wrote his little book. This book that you see right here, it's tiny. It's not nearly as good as Robert's Rules, but it was a beginning. It was something for people to use. The problem with this book was, if two separate groups came together, both having used this book, the way they finally got to the vote could be interpreted differently. So there was more confusion on how to vote than what they were voting on. A good book, but not great. 1876. This is the book that I wrote. This is Robert's Rules of Order. 1876 is when it came out, and since the day of its publication, it has been in continuous print and is used by 95% of the organizations in the world today to conduct the business meetings. I'm going to tell you in a few moments about how I got to be into the parliamentary world. It was totally unexpected, and I had no intention of doing it. But over the years, I have found there are various things that you need to know about. For example, there was a tribe in Africa, when they would get into their council meetings, to determine how long a person could talk, so long as you could stand on one foot, unaided, you could talk. If your foot went down, you were done. So you had to spend a lot more time balancing than practicing how to talk. Another group that used a very unusual item for discussion were the American Indians, the Native Americans here in this country. They used something called a talking stick. Now, a talking stick is simply a piece of wood, and it is decorated. This one is decorated with red felt, horsehair tail, rabbit fur, and a bird feather, and it is on a sassafras log. This came from my great niece, who is half Cherokee Indian, and she and her grandmother, my sister, made that for me. Now, what's so important about a talking stick? Well, it's simply this. If you were in a council and if you were in a group of Indians and you were sitting and talking, only the person holding a talking stick was allowed to talk. And it was clearly understood that you were under the power of the Great Spirit, and you could not lie. You could only tell the truth as you perceived it. That was the value of the talking stick. Everybody knows what an ordinary, good old-fashioned gavel looks like. The symbol of authority, probably since back in caveman days when they used clubs, but a gavel is supposed to bring a group to order. There was a group that was formed in the 12th century in Europe near the Baltic Sea. It was called the Hanseatic League. The Hanseatic League was a loose confederation of cities along the Baltic Sea. It transferred through different countries, different languages, different religions, different cultures. But all these cities up and along the coast of the Baltic Sea had one thing in common: maritime trade. And twice a year they came together to discuss tariffs, maybe perhaps disagreements, maybe perhaps whatever. Anyway, when they came together, they had to have a way of having a meeting, and their leader stood in a pulpit some feet above the floor, and he used this device. That was his gavel. It certainly is very visible because of the red and white checks on it, and on the end is very clearly a finger. And on the other end is a ball. It is indeed a gavel. And if you're up high and you're pointing at a large group of people, by the time you've been pointed at, you know who's being pointed at. This was part of the Hanseatic League, and they lasted up till 1937, when a leader in Europe decided he didn't want any dissenting groups. It was dissolved by Adolf Hitler, and they went out of existence. But it lasted over 700 years, the Hanseatic League. In 1864, when I was a captain in the United States Army, I was in New Bedford, Massachusetts. I was asked to chair a meeting of the New Bedford City Council, or council, or whatever it was. During the Civil War, they were afraid of a maritime attack. They had townspeople all coming together for a town council meeting, and they wanted to build fortifications around New Bedford. There was a group here that thought it should be done one way, and there was a group there that thought it should be done another, and they asked me to chair the meeting. And the meeting started about noon. I didn't know much about parliamentary procedure. In fact, what I knew was that if you took a vote, you said all in favor say aye, and if you had a gavel, you tapped it on certain occasions, and that was it. And I said I prayed to Providence those people would behave themselves, and they did not. In fact, the meeting was utter chaos. I didn't know at that time that you could balance debate back and forth, for and against. I didn't know that you could only speak once to everybody else. You couldn't speak twice till everybody had a chance to speak once. I didn't know any of these things. That meeting went on and on. We had lunch. We had supper. We had a late night snack. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, 14 hours after that meeting was called to order, everybody left. Nothing was decided except I decided I would never again chair a meeting until I knew more about how to do it. I didn't have enough knowledge. And that was when I began collecting the data in 1864. A little bit of pamphlet first, and then a little booklet, and then 15 pages. And then my friends wanted a copy, and I gave them a copy. And then pretty soon, by 1876, someone said, well, you really ought to write a book. I put it together, and as you have heard, it is the book, the story. And why should you use it, ladies and gentlemen? Because it will make your meetings fair and efficient. We have a group here in Fort Wayne, and it is called the National Association of Parliamentarians, the Bob Lyman Unit. We meet on the third Mondays at 6:30 in the Globe Room, and we would love to have each and every one of you come and visit us. We will teach you how to be effective and fair and efficient. You don't have to know a lot, and you certainly don't have to know the whole book, which now looks something like this after the parliamentarians got a hold of it. But there is something in here that you need to know, and the part that you need to know is the part that we teach, and we teach really well. So until next year, I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to return control to our chairman for the evening, Mr. Thomas Howard. Tom, thank you for letting me come.
For any that didn't understand, that was Dave Wilkins, our leader. We'd like to thank, I apologize for mispronunciations, which are going to happen, Robert Boyd, Mike Watkins, Otto Brochette, and Jim Mount, M-O-U-N-T, I believe. I would encourage all of you to, by all means, this Saturday, go to the library within walking distance of where we're shooting this to attend the speech contest. It will be the division level. It will start about 9:15 and be done well before noon. It would be well worth your time. And with that, I thank you one and all, and wish you a very good day.
American Institute of Parliamentarians, which is the other half of the church in the morning at 7:30. Very cool.